Let me ask you a question, because I think this is a generational thing, 1000%. Eric, do you think that our generation was less sensitive, or do you think this generation is too sensitive? And how do you walk that tricky tightrope when when you know you're putting something on Twitter, you're saying something on your podcast that may be inflammatory to others, or may even might cost you a job?
It's tricky now. I mean, there's certain things I won't talk about on my podcast because I know it's going to affect my bottom line. I think we're probably financially one of the more successful podcasts out there, according to Conrad. And the only way we're going to be able to maintain that is to, we know where that line is. And, I drop F-bombs all the time. That's no big deal. We talk about things, but, I don't go near politics. I just don't. Not because I'm not a political person, but because it divides your audience in half automatically. And then people start getting outraged, and before you know it, your advertisers are finding out about it, and they're reading hate mail, and it ends up costing you money. And to answer your question, is it because people are far more sensitive now, or we were far too unsensitive or insensitive?
Yeah, less sensitive.
I think today's culture is being trained and conditioned to be super sensitive. They just are. Right. We live in an outrage culture and in a victimhood culture.
Like they're coming after comedy. My whole thing with professional wrestling, comedy is they're attacking comedy, trying to cancel comedy if the jokes aren't PC. And then the next thing that people are going to come after, I'm calling this right now, is violent, and even simulated violence. There's just plenty of things that wrestling has now that people can complain about that they haven't started complaining about yet. And you just see the way the people are trained, the way we're educated. We're trained to just be outraged. And
it's so weird, because I'll give you an example. That yesterday, Disco retweeted something about some lady that she sat down with some guy at a date, and 4 minutes in, he was talking about some conservative
Candace Owens. She mentioned Candace Owens, and the girl tweeted, "Date over, block the guy's phone number." Just by bringing him, like the guy brought me. Hey, I like Candace Owens. She sounds like she knows what she's talking about.
And then, so like for example, I was watching this interview. I don't know if you remember this. It was very revelatory. It was an interview. Remember back in the day, Eric? Did you used to watch MTV in the embryonic stages, like when Mark Goodman was a VJ and all that? Do you remember those guys or no?
Sure.
Okay, so it was Mark Goodman in the 80s sitting down with David Bowie, and David Bowie's asking him, why don't you have more black artists on your show? And he's like, well, we don't know if that's going to work in Midtown America. He goes, I know who it'll work for, a black kid who likes black music, or a person that likes black music. And then he goes, let me tell you what I don't like about, and then Mark Goodman told him, here's a problem we're having. He says, what I don't like is when somebody hears that I like a certain music and they don't like me because of that. And I was almost thinking to myself, listening to this in 2020, that was already masticizing in the 80s until it is where it is now. You know what I'm saying? And I think it picked up steam in that, like, this has been going on for a little while already, and now is when it's actually kind of exploded. Do you know what I'm saying? Does that make sense?
No, it makes sense. And I think it's been going on throughout our culture. I mean, you go back to the 50s and early 60s when Elvis Presley, parents wouldn't let their kids go see Elvis Presley because they thought he was vulgar and he was singing, what they considered to be black music.
Simulating sex too. It's like through the thrust,
I mean, it's just, but now I think with social media, it's exacerbated it.
Right.
Now, and instead of, something taking its natural course in the public's eye and kind of dying a slow death, now because of social media, you can have millions of people jumping on a victim cause and creating a bunch of noise that, 10 years ago you couldn't do.
Right, because before it was just like, you only saw it in the people that were around you, right?
Right.
So like I remember when I was in the military, there was like these guys that they just listened to like heavy metal music. They hated rap. All the rap guys hated all the rock guys. And it's like you were separated. You know what I'm saying? And it's just incredible to me how back then you would only see it like on my ship. Right now, when you're on social media, it's out there exponentially. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, I mean, go back to the No Limit Soldiers and the Rap is Crap, angle we did. I mean, you couldn't pull that off today.
Yeah, that was very divisive. Yeah,
I don't think it was at all. I mean, by the way,
it was. I think it was.
We would laugh at it. Because it was funny. Rap is crap. They get a bunch of rednecks.
But there were a lot of rednecks that didn't like that you know, and they were like, yeah.
You know, today what would happen? You do that, and it's just inflamed. Oh, these are racist and stuff. And like, wait a second, this is. I just thought this is funny. You know, it's like I'm not going. The thing is, like, we're having to apologize for things that we thought were just basic general humor back in the day. And it's like people are looking back at what the things that we thought was funny and think that we're bad people for thinking it was funny. It's like, guys, it's just, we're not bad people. It's just like the culture changed over the course of the past 20 years. And the culture that we lived in was a little bit raw. We lived in an era of sticks and stones may break my bones, but words will never hurt me. Now we live in an era where people tell you words hurt. And that's just that's basically the gist of the society we live in. It's just like that's changed. But that doesn't make us any like bad people that we rubber stamp that stuff back in the day. You know, it's like, it was funny, you know?
By the way, Konnan, I had breakfast with Master P about 3 weeks ago in New York.
Very successful guy.
He's still doing really well.
Yeah. How did you guys connect after all these years? Like, that you guys had lunch?
He reached out.
You reached out? Nice.
Yeah.
That's funny. That's okay.
Isn't he promoting now, like House of Glory or something like that in New York? Or he's a half owner or something like that, I read?
Yeah, he's got a financial interest in it. Don't know many details, but it was just we were just hanging out socially. It was just a get together, and he gave me a call after he read that I was no longer in WWE, and said, "Hey, next time you're in LA or
how cool is that, right?
Huh?
How cool is that?
No, it's great, and he's a super guy, very smart, very successful, and he's got a good instinct.
Yes. 1,000%. Let me ask you a question, Eric. Have you watched any movies lately or read any books lately? Anything out there that's caught your eye that you want to see?
Yeah, I mean, I watched the two that I watched recently. Joker, I've seen twice. The writer for Joker, Scott Silver, is a friend of mine, and I know Todd Phillips, the director. So I had to go see that, and it was so amazing that I had to see it again. Saw it twice. And the other one that I saw twice that I really dug is a Quentin Tarantino movie called Once Upon a Time in Hollywood. If you haven't seen it, it's worth checking out because it was a really interesting take on history. Something that actually happened with a whole entirely different ending and twist on it.
Yeah,
really, really, really well done.
Yeah, I saw that. I saw both movies. I like both of them. Big fan of the Joker. Big fan of the scene with Robert De Niro because that came out of nowhere. What was the ending, Joe, that we were kind of trying to figure out the ending? Do you remember?
Oh, in Joker, whether or not he imagined it all. Where at the end he's in there telling his story, but he kind of it was kind of an illusion or whatever. Do
you think at the end he was imagining that, or that was happening?
I mean, I the way I took it, it was actually happening.
Right.
Now I've been reading about a sequel coming out. So there may be another Joker movie.
Let me tell you, Eric, something I'm not a big fan of. Are you ready for this?
I'm ready.
I'm not a big fan of directors who take the cheap way out, a la The Sopranos, and they say it's up for interpretation. No. Don't interpret nothing for me. Give me an ending. I understand what the fuck happened. I don't like movies where I have to, it's up to my, you know what I'm saying? I like
you write the finish.
Right. Give me a finish. Like that. I didn't like the ending of The Sopranos, for example, and I can give you some other examples of movies like that.
Yeah, no, Dexter, I think, is famous for that as well. There's a lot of them, unfortunately, but I think that goes back to what we were talking about before. Is paint your picture with big, broad strokes and bright colors so that the audience can get it, and they know what the finish is, they know what the ending is. Don't, like you say, Konnan, take the easy way out and leave it vague because you can't come up with a good ending.
Right.
That's like that's a fucking DQ finish all day long.
Yes, 1,000%. Something that just occurred to me as we were speaking, Eric. What are you looking at doing now? Will you be doing podcasting? Do you think you'll be working for another company? What do you think you'll be doing now?
Well, I'm going to keep the podcast going as long as it's working for everybody, and I enjoy doing it. So that'll probably be in my future for quite a while. I'm resurrecting a couple television projects that I had in development prior to going to WWE. I kind of put them on ice.
How about the old idea that we had hanging off of Scott Bale's single at 46, Disco single at 52?
Just 52.
Just 52. Okay.
I mean, how interesting? Look, I mean, how interesting is watching what any 52-year-old does?
Right.
He works at the world's largest strip club. That could be interesting.
Yeah, right.
There you go.
Yeah.
And you know what Disco told me, which is kind of telling? He says, back in the day, after the show, if I went to the locker room and said, hey, who wants to come to Sapphire? That would have been full of the boys. Nowadays, nobody goes. How incredible is that? Like, he went to AEW, went to Vegas. He said none of the boys were there.
Yeah,
right?
None of the fans either. Unbelievable. Like bro, there's wrestling shows in town, and nobody's going out to the strip clubs after the show. I think I find that fascinating. I'm like, a target market that you would think like, okay, all these people are going to be coming to the strip club after the show. Nobody. And just
how wild is that? Can you imagine the animals that we were in the 90s? I mean, there would have probably been more of the boys in there than the actual clients.
Yeah, I try to put all that out of my mind.
Yeah. I'm saying that's how things change. You know what I'm saying? It's kind of funny to, that you lived in that era. We lived in that era where everybody, hey, let's go party, strip clubs, all that very wild era, which unfortunately took a lot of our, brothers from us to how it is now. It's very tranquil compared to how we were,
Yeah, it's funny. The last time I went to a strip club, and I can't even remember how long ago it was. It was in Vegas. I remember it must have been 10 years ago, maybe longer. Yeah. And I walked in and I looked around and I went, wow, every one of these dancers looked like they could be my daughter's friend. Right. And I felt so old and creepy and crusty. I was like, I'm not doing this anymore.
Right.
Yeah.
Hey, let me ask you this too. I want to get this out. You told the story on the 83 Weeks of Conrad about the Tony Khan thing and the Madden with the roast and stuff and all that. And I saw Meltzer try to take a shot at you on Twitter, basically saying that, like, trying to call you out, saying your story's not accurate. I just want to verify that I heard from the source of this story what, like, immediately after it happened, your version of the story is correct. Okay,
it's funny.
So that's funny. Like, we're gonna call you getting called lying. When I see you getting called out for lying, I'm like, no. That he's got the right story here. Like, so somebody else owes the apology.
So here's the difference, and I was going to respond to that. Maybe I will at some point tomorrow or the next day when I get a little more time. But here's
when you have trolling time.
Here's the difference between Meltzer and myself. Number one, I'm going to name my source. Meltzer never does. He just says, I have sources. He never names anybody. My source was Mark Madden.
Mine too.
Mark Madden is the one that told me what went down. And by the way, that's not secondhand or third hand or fourth hand, the way Dave relies on information. That was firsthand. Yeah. Oh, and here's another difference, Dave. I was in the fucking room. Dave writes about stuff that's happening 1,500 miles. He's not even in the freaking room. And he takes a position that he knows exactly what's going on and puts it out there as news. I was in the freaking room. Mark Madden is the one that told me about the incident. I made it clear when I was talking, I think it was on After 83 Weeks on my YouTube channel. I said, I was standing way in the back of the room. I didn't see any of it go down. I made that very clear. But my source, in the first person, Mark Madden, who was there and involved in it, is the one that relayed the story to me. That's the difference between myself and Dave, is I'll name my sources, and generally I don't talk about things unless I was in the room.
Yeah. Right, and that's the difference between, all these so-called now wrestling experts who I see them sometimes fighting with wrestling. I'm like, hey, motherfucker, you've never even been in the business. You're not backstage. You don't know. You know what I'm saying? Like, I mean, that's almost like me. I'm a humongous, University of Miami football fan, like humongous. I wouldn't go over there and try to tell the coach how to do his job because he's there. He knows the players that come on time, who has an attitude issue, who's injured, who works with, you know what I'm saying? He's there. He's hands-on, not me. You know what I'm saying?
No, and I think, that's always been my bitch, with wrestling writers. And I do have to say, and there's a lot of them now that I think are really good. They're actually professional in terms of the way they approach their business. Ryan Satin, I think, does a great job. He's tried to source. He's reached out to me to confirm or deny stories. There's even Wade Keller, and Dave Shear and Mike Johnson, guys.
Let me ask you one question right off the bat. Have you heard, and you haven't lived till you have you heard Wade Keller trying to do promos for WWE?
No.
Can you find one of those, Joe?
So Eric, on that Russo show, he does the cash ready that Mark's saying. So they'll play clips of Keller cutting promos for guys. So one of the fans superimposed, took the actual interviews of the wrestlers and did it with Wade's voice speaking the promo. It's literally one of the funniest things you've ever seen because the promos are terrible. You know, so it's like Wade, because Wade does not cut good promos for wrestlers. I mean, I don't know if you've heard some of his takes on this, but it's very generic and boring, right? And so there's this guy that posts these videos on Vimeo or whatever it is, just the promos. They're really hysterical. But I'll have Joe send you one, and just like if you could look, it's really funny. Some of the funniest things I've seen.
Love to.
If you find one, Joe, before Eric gets off, so he can hear it, because they're usually short, you'll pop. Eric, while he's finding that, what do you got going on? What do you want to plug? What's going on with you?
Well, I'm just taking a couple months off. I'm hanging down here with my kids for the holidays, and then probably heading back to Wyoming sometime in January, February. I've got some travel coming up, some things that I'm doing. I've got a movie I'm working on with Netflix that'll hopefully start getting
working
up
on
here.
What are you writing it, or what are you doing? Producing. All right. Can you give any details?
No, I better not. It's a Netflix movie. It's I can tell you it's already been put out there. It was in Hollywood Reporter, I think, back in February. It's a Hulk Hogan biopic. Right. Take your pick. Right. The director is Todd Phillips. The writer is Scott Silver from Joker.
Okay. Oh, really? Wow.
Chris Hemsworth is going to play Hulk Hogan, but beyond what was in that press release, I can't really talk about it.
All right, that's cool. That'll be very interesting. I'm sure very successful. Anything else? 83 weeks. What?
83 weeks is still going strong. I'm going to talk to Conrad. After the holidays. In fact, I'm going to go up to a Christmas party at the Conradison in December with my wife, and I may talk to him there. But we're actually talking about launching a second podcast, completely different than 83 weeks.
Right.
I don't want to dilute that property because it's doing really well for us. But I'm exploring perhaps a second podcast. It would be completely different.
I would like to say that Conrad is a jolly old fellow.
He's great.
Yeah,
he's great.
He is.
He definitely plays Santa Claus. I mean, he dresses up as Santa Claus each year, right? I imagine he's got to. He looks like a perfect Santa Claus.
He's a great friend. He's really smart, and I'm grateful to be working with him.
I'll tell you, the one thing I was impressed with him is how he just came in and started figuring out ways to make money doing this.
That's what he's really smart about.
He helped. We had a conference call with him and said, "Hey, bro, what are you doing on page? How are you doing this?" It's like because we're green. The podcasting is, we're greenhorns in it. We just come on and tell the stories of it. But to actually try to make money doing this and make as much as we can, he's the one that set us in the right direction.
Plus he did a great job. He's the
smartest guy in the room right now.
Plus, he did a great job with StarCast, and he's always wants to help. He's not one of these guys that, you know what I'm saying? There's some people that help everybody and some guys that don't help anybody, and he wants to help everybody and see everybody do good. So everybody pays it forward to him too. You know what I'm saying?
Absolutely.
Did you find that, Joe? Did we waste enough time for you to find that?
Looks like they took the account down again. There's nothing.
Okay. I will have Joe, because Joe, I think, edits 83 weeks, right, Joe?
Yes.
I will have Joe send it to your email, Eric, so you can check that out and just send us a message if you thought it was funny or not.
Yes,
you got it.
Fine one. Send it.
And I want one more thing, man. I want to thank you very much. I know in the past you and me always used to clash heads a lot because we're both hard-headed there. But I appreciate you a lot now. As you get older, you know how it is, Eric. You appreciate everything more than when you're younger, and I just appreciated working for you and being with you in WCW.
Thank you for saying that, Konnan. I feel the same way. I enjoy talking with you and seeing you and Disco. I like to bust your balls as often as I possibly can because it's such good material. But nothing but respect for you guys. Thank you very much.
Hey,
same thing, Eric. Thank you very much for being on, keeping it 100. Boom.
See you, man.